Islam, Islam, peace, peace. Greetings to you all. Sheikh Way L, a.k.a. Lord Abba, a.k.a. Mr. Just the Facts. Mr. Just the Facts. First, I want to start by saying I give all praise to Allah, the beneficent, the merciful. I give the highest of honors to his holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I extend those honors to the harbinger and forerunner, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I extend honors, high honors, to all true and divine prophets. I extend honors to all leaders and freedom fighters who were either sent to us or raised up from amongst us in the West. And I send honors to you all, for when man honors man, he honors his father, God Allah. Islam Moors, my phone is crazy. That's why my screen probably looks a little blurry to you. I don't know, on my end it just looks smoky. But so I can't really see my comments too much. So I'm going to try my best here. We're going to get into these claims, these claims that Moors are making about Noble Drew Ali's statements being in agreement with Kanye West's statements. Man. I'm gonna let some people get on. I'm gonna talk about it for a little bit. This was the conversation in the barbershop today. This is the conversation that is dominating social media right now. This is a conversation that should be dominating, because at some point in time, we have to get it right. You know, Islam Moors, I can't see everybody's posts, forgive me. But Islam. This conversation has two elements to it. This conversation has two elements to it. The first element is Kanye West's crazy claim that slavery was a choice. It was a choice. He said it. There was no, because you got people trying to say, oh, y'all only got this part and y'all only got bits and sound bites. What are you talking about? This is verbatim what he said. 400 years? Come on, that sounds like a choice. This is what the man said. So anyway, the second element is this persistent myth that we were enslaved in the Americas for 400 years. This persistent myth. Again, Islam, everybody, I see some of y'all Islams. I can't see all of them. My phone is crazy. I want to get into this a little bit. First, I want to start off with this 400-year myth, this false notion that we were enslaved in America for 400 years. And I'm going to, because I let my website get shut down for specific reasons. Just playing my little chess game right now. But it is what it is. I still have my information. So, and I'm going to put that blog up on my Facebook page. It's on my other Facebook page, which I'm thinking about activating. I don't know. I'll take this stuff one day at a time, man. To be honest with you, we were not enslaved on this land for 400 years. I had this brother, I'm going to call him out, Malik. He's on Facebook as Cuban Crisis. He came on my post yesterday when I made that post, clearly misreading what I wrote. I just don't understand how my words were misinterpreted. And that's the basis of this live stream today. Misinterpreted words. Because all I said was, we weren't enslaved on this land for 400 years. So the brother came on the thread and said, what do you mean? Slavery didn't exist? Slavery didn't happen? What's this guy talking about? Hey, I mean, look, some people have reading comprehension skills. It is what it is. I won't chastise them for it, but when you're trying to pass yourself off as someone who's awake and conscious, etc., at least have reading comprehension skills. At least know how to listen. Ask the brother, well, show and prove this 400-year slavery that you speak of. Show and prove. The brother kept commenting, and I kept pressing him for proof of this 400 years of slavery. No proof. It's the same red herrings. Now try to distract and go, again, that stuff doesn't work with me. That stuff doesn't work with me. You're not going to get me off the topic point. I've mastered the art of logical fallacies. I have to, because most of the people that we deal with, they just think they're slick. And when you beat them on one aspect of a discussion, they try to pivot to something else. Anything for them to get a aha, I got you moment, because they know they're losing on the premise of the argument and the debate. Now, 1619. I'm going to put that blog up too on my page. That's another blog that I had to touch on. It's the myth of 400 years of enslavement. And I believe that myth starts with Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. I believe, because for me, it is the first place that I hear this myth growing up at 5%. And there may be an older source. I don't know. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But if he isn't the originator, he is the one who popularized this myth that there is this 400 years of enslavement of our people on this land. And this is false. Trying to fit in the biblical narrative. I forget which chapter and verse that is in Genesis, but I have it documented, and I'm going to put all this stuff up on my Facebook page. 1619, there were 21 of our people who came over on ships. And this is a fact. This is a fact. How did they come? Did they come bound, dragged from the shores of Africa? No, this is not what history records. This 1619 date, and when our people started to become dragged from the shores of Africa to specifically become slaves in the United States of America, has been conflated greatly. There's been not much scholarship done on the separation of these 2 points. These first 21, of them, 2 people are documented. Antonio X, who would change his name to Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson. Bear with me, because we're going to go in a little bit here today. And I would hope, because y'all know me, I'm not a cult leader. I'm not the Moor that need a bobblehead, because that's what these Moors are doing, that's making these points. They're making these points, and they're getting all of these brothers and sisters to come on their threads. They just bobbleheads. Yup. And they think that because 20 people agree with their point, that their point is right. And I'm wrong. Or anybody who says the opposite of the point that they've made, which is Kanye West co-signs Prophet Noble Drew Ali's statement, is wrong. We're going to debunk that. We're going to debunk that. Anthony Johnson was able to work as a servant. The early records, and I have all of this documented in the scholarship. The early records show that these 21 were not listed as slaves, that they were listed as servants. Anthony Johnson, Antonio, courted his wife, whose name became Elizabeth, on the ship over here. On the ship over here. We don't hear stories of people being enslaved when slavery becomes this snatch and grab on the coast of Africa. And we have two people that's on a ship smitten with each other. And then they finally go through the rigors of servitude and they get married. This is in the records. And I'm gonna post this blog on my Facebook, in my Facebook notes, and I'm praying Moors, especially, but Moors of the Moorish Science Temple of America, excuse me. But really, all of us in general, the slavery narrative has to be cracked because it's what keeps us mentally bound. It's like the picture of the horse tied to a plastic chair, and the horse won't move, not knowing that it can drag that plastic chair, maybe 100 like it, but it won't move because it has the leash, the fetter basically on its neck that's bound to a chair, a plastic chair at that. And that's what we have become with this slavery thing. Anthony Johnson changes his name from Antonio. He marries the woman he courted on the ship on the way over. They have a baby. This is in Jamestown, Virginia, y'all. They have a baby. This baby is Christian in a Christian church. They own land. They have their own home. This is 6-7 years after this term of servitude, 1619. So we're talking in the 1620s, 1630s here. They, according to the historical records, had the same exact rights as any European colonist in the land. They had servants that tended to their homes and their land. They sued a man over one of their servants. I believe his name was John Kazar. I could be off, but I have that in my notes. I could be off on that name, but I believe that's the name. They sued a European family over this servant in a court here on this land. And they won. They won. This idea that we have about slavery is we're not getting the whole story. We're getting a portion of the story. We're getting a portion. Please share this video, people. I would love for some historians to come on. Although this message is to address the Moorish Science Temple of America, I may actually do something live later on Google Hangouts. Me and my brother Ali Bey, he has agreed to come on with me. It just all depends how I feel. This slavery narrative that we have, Prophet Noble Drew Ali says what? In the slavery narrative, that between the years of 1774 and 1779, our religion and our identity begins to get stripped from us. Our nationality, Moors, our national descent name. And that can even be ambiguous to a degree, because the prophet said our nationality was stripped from us. Was it our nationality? Because America had no formation and it wasn't a nation. It was just a group of colonies beholden to the crown at that time. So we can surmise that he meant our descent name, which is Moors. Okay, cool. The people here, not the people of the Moors Sundry Act. And I have other sources that I might get into later. people from Morocco that wound up in the United States of America. Like I may go in tonight. I'm going to get into all of that. If I do. Let's read what the prophet said about this slavery thing. And let's just jump into this. This is chapter 47, verses 16 through 17. I'm going to start from verse 15. This is in our Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. And please, people, share the video. Let's build up an audience. Let's show that we Moorish American Muslims are leaders, that we are leaders, not just physically, but leaders in thought, because we're studying non-revisionist history that has become popular amongst us and amongst we learned certain things in school in our textbooks that were patently false. So let me read from the prophet's words, because Moors have misconstrued this man's words. Matter of fact, wait, hold on. Before I read, we wonder why Prophet Noble Drew Ali gets a bad rap all the time from the Sarasut and Setis and the young pharaohs, the savages. You know, them guys are savages, and other, name some of them. Saint Kofa, Polite, Shaka Akmos, all of these Kemetic people. Garfield, I've done battle with him over Noble Drew Ali. Noble Drew Ali gets a bad rap because of the misinterpretation of Moors, of this man's simple, clear words, reading comprehension. They misconstrue to fit their ideological standpoint. And then this, like the Taj Tariq Bey stuff, said he was responding to that stuff when he first came out. He wasn't responding necessarily to Noble Drew Ali. Look at a lot of their arguments now. They're still mixing in Pleasant Bay's pseudo teachings and misinterpretations with what Prophet Noble Drew Ali actually brought. And in this, Prophet Noble Drew Ali gets the bad name. This is, and when I come and say that's not what Noble Drew Ali is saying, everybody looks at me like I'm wrong. I'm bad. Brother Roger Brewington, this guy's been a hater of me. Just a hater, period. Since I got into this thing, still hating. Comes on the thread, and I guess because everybody else is saying one thing and I'm saying something different, I gotta be wrong. No analysis, no nothing. I have to be wrong. And he made the statement, I wonder if the Moors in your temple feel the same way. I don't know. But it's not going to change my research, because 20 people may say one thing and I'm looking at clear words and the research to back up those words that says something else. I'm going to stick with the facts all the time. Mr. Just the facts. I strive to get it right. So let me read the prophet's words. He says, the time has come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. 16. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. 17. This is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. Let me sip some water real quick. I want to break this down. Moors all over the internet, all over social media right now, are saying that Kanye West, because I had to comment on Brother Antonio Smith Bay's post, because he took Kanye West's quote and then use the quote from the prophet that I just read. And I said, these two things have absolutely nothing to do with each other. They have nothing to do with each other. Kanye West said 400 years of slavery was a choice. So let's use this narrative of 400 years. We know that there's no 400-year enslavement on his land. Well, those of us who do know. So let's stick with that theme. This is basically saying that we willingly allowed ourselves to be captured, whether we were here or whether we were in Africa. And that once we got here, we said, you know what? This is just our condition. We're just slaves, and that's it, and that's that. Forgetting about all of the revolts that not only took place on this land, but in places like Haiti and other places in South America where our people were. If slavery was a choice, there would have been no slave revolts, period. This idea is idiotic. To conflate Prophet Noble Drew Ali's teachings with that claim shows how myopic most of the Moors in the Moorish Science Temple of America are. So let's get back into this. I'm going to start from 16. Prophet Noble Drew Ali says, through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. Every nation. Now, here's a challenge. The Europeans are a nation. They're comprised of several different countries in Europe, several different nations. But we look at their national descent as being European. Show me where Europeans make the claim, because they were enslaved in every way and by many different people, Europeans were enslaved. The Moors, let's just deal with Moorish history. I don't even have to go all the way back into the time of Babylonia or in Arabia, where the true Arabians, the dark-skinned Arabians, enslaved these light-skinned Europeans and these light-skinned people. No, let's just deal with the Moorish history, where we had enslaved hundreds or maybe tens of thousands of Europeans. Find me the Europeans who are running around today saying that their enslavement was their choice. No, they fought. They did whatever was needed to get out of that bondage. They didn't just stay enslaved. Our people were doing the same thing here. To think that we just laid down and no, that's just not, you're going off of revisionist history. Again, Prophet Noble Drew Ali says every nation has suffered slavery. You're going to find slavery all throughout the history of man. And we're going to get into some of that. And it says, because they honored not the creed and principles of their fathers. 17. The prophet said, this is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America. Did anybody catch the key word in what I just read? Let me read it again. This is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them. They didn't give it up willy-nilly. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said it was taken from them. Now, don't get me wrong. There were events where we had to profess ourselves as being other than what we weren't in order to receive certain perks in this land. So I'm going to get into some scholarship because y'all know how I do, Mr. Just the Facts. Let's get into some scholarship. But I want the key word, that our nationality was taken from us, that we were stripped from wearing our fezzes and our turbans as a community on this land. I'm reading a paper right now by a man named Gomez. I'm going to pull all this stuff up. I'm reading all this stuff right now because our people, we just want to believe. We still, as a people, have a slave mentality. And Prophet Noble Drew Ali says the only form of slavery you have now is mental slavery. And a lot of us we haven't let that go. This is why there's so much consternation in the Moorish Science Temple of America. That Negro chip that was implanted within us during the times of slavery, most of us have not used the tools, and this is MST of A specific, have not used the tools that were given to us to deactivate that chip and remove it from us and stamp it. Anyway, let's get into some of this. The prophet says, due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. Okay, I want to get into some scholarship. This is from the book, Stanley Lane Poole's book, what is Stanley Lane Poole book? I don't feel like flipping back to the cover because I might lose my page. So forgive me. But y'all know more should know which book I'm talking about from Stanley Lane Poole. I think it's just called The Moors, but y'all correct me in the chat. This is from page 48. It says this. Let me see. It says, this is coming from page 49. Matter of fact, let me go to page 48. It says, above all, the slaves who had been cruelly ill-used by the Goths and the Romans had cause to congratulate themselves upon the change, meaning their conversion. Well, not necessarily conversion, but the change in rule from Christian rule to Moorish rule when the Moors come in and they rule Europe. It says, slavery is a very mild and humane institution in the hands of a good Mohammedan. I disagree with that, but if you inherit a situation, he gets into this. He says the Arabian prophet, while unable to do away with an ancient institution, people think slavery comes with Islam and slavery comes with Christianity and the quote unquote white man, they're boogeyman. They just slave minded, as I was speaking of earlier. It says the Arabian prophet, while unable to do away with an ancient institution, which was nevertheless repugnant to the socialistic principles of Islam, repugnant to the socialistic principles of Islam, did his utmost to soften the rigors of slavery. God, said he, hath ordained that our brothers should be your slaves. Therefore, him whom God hath ordained to be the slave of his brother must give him the food which he eateth himself, and of the clothes wherewith he clothed himself, and not order him to do anything beyond his power. A man who ill treats his slave will not enter into paradise. End quote. There is no more commendable action in Mohammedan morals than to free slaves, and such enfranchisement is enjoined by the prophet, especially as an atonement for an underserved blow or other injustice. In Andalusia, the slaves upon the estates that had passed from the Christians into the possessions of Muslims were almost in the position of small farmers. Their Mohammedan masters, whose trade was war, and who despised heartily such menial occupation, as tilling the soil, left them free to cultivate the land as they pleased, and only insisted on a fair return of products. Slaves of Christians, instead of being hopelessly condemned to servitude for all their lives, were now provided with the simplest possible road to freedom. They had only to go to the nearest Mohammedan of repute and repeat the formula of belief. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet, and they became immediately free. What am I relaying here? What am I relaying here? Prophet Noble Drew Ali speaks about us. He said, let me quote him verbatim. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. I urge you all to get this book right here. There's a lecture on my YouTube channel called Islamic Scholar Destroys Young Pharaoh Seti Ankh Shaka Akmos on Islam and Slavery. The premise of that lecture is predicated upon this book. Chapter 3 of this book is called The Quran in Chains. Let me give a brief. Our people were warring over there. Islam comes and softens the blows of war. But the beefs, they raged on. Let me use an analogy. In New York, you had cats that turned blood and Crip, right? That didn't stop the beefs between certain hoods. So one hood claim one set, one hood claim another set, but they still blood. But they bang it. The most famous example that we can use is in the spotlight right now with Tekashi 6ix9ine and Casanova. Casanova did the song Set Trippin', and Tekashi 6ix9ine responded back with one of the songs. Now this thing, according to the Bloods of New York, they turned blood because they felt that they were being oppressed by the Nietas and the Latin kings who had solidified themselves in uniformity in the prison systems. So they turned blood so that they could fight back against that. Again, my point stands. Let's go back to Islam in early Africa. I pray that y'all are listening and analyzing these analogies that I'm giving. These beefs were going on in Africa before Islam comes. When Islam comes, the beefs die down. But then they start to pick back up. Kingdom fighting against kingdom, clerics now fighting against clerics, people trying to manipulate religion. They were already doing this stuff. They were already doing it. So now these wars are back in full swing. 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. Naturally, in war, there's prisoners. These prisoners did what? These prisoners did slave work. You find prisoners on the walls of ancient Egypt, bound with their hands behind their back. People that say that there's not a word for slavery in the Egyptian hieroglyphs haven't studied any works on the Egyptian hieroglyphs. There's several words for slaves and several examples at that. Now the Europeans are beginning their slave trade. And they're coming to the coasts of Africa. These raids that they're trying to do, they're not as successful. They're yielding a few Moors here and a few Moors there. But we maybe fast forward 100 years and they are ready-made prisoners, ready-made slaves who are prisoners of people that look just like us. The Dahomey tribe sold more of our people to the European than any other tribe documented. What were the Dahomey tribe? What was their religious leanings? They were a non-Islamic coastal tribe. They sold at least, I believe the number is 30 million. I could be off, but I think 30 million. That number may be off 10 million, give or take, to the European. The Dahomey tribe. They said, even if my number is off, it's been a while since I've actually looked at that fact. It's in the millions. Millions. The Europeans have the records. This is a non-coastal African tribe. So all of those Afrocentrists that are against Islam, that talk about Islamic slavery, do you claim the Dahomey? Because they represent the Africa that you love, the spear chuckers. But they were warriors. Let's get back to the point. These Europeans come and the prisoners are being sold from the kings that captured the people from other kingdoms that they were at war with. And there was a trade going on. The Europeans were giving these African kings weaponry and alcohol. It was a real big thing back in those days. And things that weren't produced on the African continent. It was a trade off going on. These people come to the United States of America, already Islamic. That's one aspect of it. Then you had the Moors who were already here. And I might go into that later if I go live. There were so many of our people here on this land. I want to read something real quick. Let's get back. And everything that I say here can be backed up by the scholarship of the historical record. This is coming from a book called Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America, a genealogical history by Donald Neil Yates, page 148, originally published in 1949. Speaking about these Jews and these Muslims, right? Pay attention, people. He says, all of these were at least publicly Christian due to the South Carolina Election Act of 1721. This defined a voter as a free, white, Christian male, 21 years of age, who owned 50 acres of land or paid 20 shillings currency. At that time, it was $25.50 in taxes, and had lived in South Carolina for at least 1 year. The result of such law would be to prompt most persons of Jewish or Muslim ancestry to be circumspect about practicing their faiths, to say the least. This is important. This is saying that you had Jews and Muslims in early America. I'm reading several papers. I'm reading a paper right now that I would like for you all to pull up and research and read on your own, called Muslims in Early America by Michael A. Gomez. He is getting into the scarce but prevalent records of our people being here in the Americas during this colonial time. I'm reading a dissertation by a woman who got her doctorate in African American studies for the University of Massachusetts by the name of Rita Reynolds, who's speaking about the Moors who were here. We're talking about the 1700s and how they were, because of the treaty, they were treated different. But something happens because they weren't necessarily allowed to practice their Islam while they were being while they were in servitude, and they began to take these occupations. So when we start piecing these pieces of the puzzle together, we start to get a clear picture that people started to drop Islam for the perks of citizenship. So when Prophet Noble Drew Ali is speaking about these principles, number one, you have Moors who are Islamic selling other Moors who are mainly Islamic to Europeans. Again, get this book, The Walking Quran. He delves into history that has not been touched upon in the manner that he puts it together. Rudolph Bilal Ware. Get this book. Chapter 3 explains it. It explains how the abolitionist movement first begins in Africa with Abdul Qadir Khan, and how this Imam, Al-Imam, in the Wolof, it becomes Al-Imami. He gives and provides the basis for European abolition in Europe, which then becomes the basis for the abolition of slavery in the United States of America. This is the scholarship that we're dealing with. So when Prophet Noble Drew Ali is speaking about these principles, well, we stop practicing our religion so that we could own land here, so that we can vote, so that we could become effective in things, policy that would affect our citizenship here. Not all of us were dragged from the from the shores of Africa to become slaves. We had a lot of people who were here also. And what happens when you can't practice your religion no more? What happens when you become stripped of your nationality? What happens when you become disconnected and all of these people are enslaved, and then you now become lumped in with these groups, and the next generation, they do not know. This is why the prophet said all nations have suffered slavery. And in this has nothing to do with anything Kanye West says whatsoever. This has nothing to do with anything Kanye West says, this being a choice. And I pray that you all, Moors, communicate it to the wise for thine own improvement. Communicate it to the ignorant so that they would become aware. I don't get, and I don't want to be too long-winded. I don't know how long I was on. Let me pause. You have Moors in this Moorish Science Temple of America and in this Moorish movement in general. They have crafted up a specific set of ideas. Like a maxim is America. A maxim is not America. Noble Drew Ali never says that. When you ask them for proof, they go to chapter 47, right? And they say, see, the Moab, their dominion, talk about the Moab, the dominion and inhabitation, their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa. Now we talking all the way about another continent, across the great Atlantis, even unto present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico. This is what they use to try to justify a maxim being the same as America. When the prophet clearly states, Old Man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of a maxim, the first true and divine name of Africa. In the questionnaire, question 33 says, what is the modern name for a maxim? Africa. And yet, I had the same guy, Roger Brewington. We had this debate on one of the threads months back. He said everybody in every grand body believes this. Who are you to come along and change it? What? You kidding me? This is why I'm unpopular, Moors. This is why I am very unpopular. I'm not a bobblehead. And this is for specific haters who I hope find a way to watch this video. I want you to know that I'm talking to you specifically. I'm not a go along to get along. I am you're going to have to show and prove in order for me to accept anything. I don't care about paper, my name being held in the ranks as some paper. How do the people see me? Wait, no, forget that. How do I see myself? I already see myself as a sheik and an adept. Already see myself as a divine minister and the grand sheik. I do the things that the mission statement urges us, instructs us, commands us to do to make me feel that way. So a piece of paper from one in authority is not going to make me feel more of that. And not having that is not going to make me feel any less. So when Moors take clear words, and misconstrue them because they have a narrative that they want to push, not only do they not realize that they're hurting Prophet Noble Drew Ali, they're hurting the organization. They're hurting the foundation of it. Let's get back to the point before I close this out. Let me read it again. Let me read it one more time. This is from our little pamphlet. Circle 7 Quran. Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Prophet Noble Drew Ali speaking. He says, through sin and disobedience, these are key words here, every nation, not just us, has suffered slavery. It's the comma there. Every nation. Who's admitting? What other nation is running around admitting slavery was our choice? We deserve it. Like, let's be real here, Moors. Have we not been imbued with reason? Due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. Christianity. If European Christians fell back into slavery right now, it would be due to the fact that they didn't honor the creed of the Christian doctrine. Go back and read the New Testament, all of you. Read the New Testament. Read it. All of the principles in the New Testament are Islamic. I challenge anyone, any one of you, to bring me something that says that maybe there's a thing or two. So let me rephrase that. The predominant message of the New Testament is at its core Islamic. At its core. If I'm wrong, bring your proofs. New Testament. There comes a point, however, when Christianity decides that it is going to merge its new doctrine with the book of the people it persecuted, the Jews, people that looked like them, some people that looked like us as well, that claimed this particular religion and identity, Jewish, Jude, Ayude. Christians took this book, the Old Testament, and merged it together for the purpose of domination. So if the Europeans were to fall into slavery, then they would deserve it. They would deserve it because they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. And this is why the Prophet Noble Drew Ali says that, therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. Let me continue. Somebody says Islam, the creed, another thing. I don't know what you mean by that, Tariq JL. I don't understand the premise of your question. And I can't see anything you typed prior. It's kind of hard, but let me continue. I wanted to touch on the creed and principles of their forefathers. The prophets spoke about Christianity and their forefathers and what they designed Christianity for. And if you read, I want to stress that if you read the New Testament, it's Islamic. It's Islamic. Okay. Blessed. Jesus says in the New Testament, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God, or the children of God, the peacemakers. We teach that Islam means peace, and that this Islam means to be at peace with yourself and at peace with your surroundings. And in order for our surroundings to be peaceful, we have to make it that way. In order for ourselves to be peaceful, we have to make it that way. Let me continue. This is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774. I just read where we started to chuck our religious practices and identity for representation under colonial rule. We were pressured. But the key word is, this is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them. It was taken. It was snatched. Look up any synonyms for the word taken, please. Stolen, thieved. It was taken from the Moors. That means we still had it, but we lost it. Let me go into one more historical point, because I want to, like, y'all know me. I love to deal with the scholarship. And you got some Moors that don't like the scholarship. You got some Moors who literally feel that they shouldn't be scholars. They shouldn't know nothing past just quoting the doctrine. When the prophet himself, hold on. Let me read what the prophet said. Oh, hold on. Because these ideas are laughable to me. The prophet said, this is chapter 48, verse 5, that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa, meaning our people here in America, the prophet never said that we weren't the descendants of Africa. But the Afrocentrists believe that because of the twisted ideology of some Moors. That the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men unto love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. That there is still much wisdom. Wisdom derives from understanding. Understanding derives from knowledge. My 5% brothers, I'm sorry, but y'all got it wrong. It's knowledge, understanding, then wisdom. Let me read something to y'all real quick. I know I said I was going to close it out, but I see, we still have some people watching. So I want to get into this just real quick, because I want to speak about how we were also pressured in our losing our nationality and things of that nature being taken from us. And at times our willingness to try to, hide it because we were being pressured. I mean, it is what it is. To say that slavery, however, was a choice, that we chose to be property of other people, is just preposterous. Let me read this. This is coming from a book called The History of the Reign of Philip II, King of Spain, by Robert Watson, page 157, published in 1792. Let's get into this. It says, this is page 157, but considering the near affinity between the Moriscos and the African Moors in respect of religion, manners, language, and descent, together with the alienation from the Spanish government, which the cruelties exercised against them by the Inquisition and their exclusion from all offices of trust, sounds familiar? Must have carried to the greatest height. It is not surprising that Philip's apprehensions were alarmed and that he thought it necessary to make provisions against the danger which seems to threaten him. This is Philip II, who's ruling Spain at this time, is fearing that the Moors would attain the highest seats of office. Does that sound familiar? Voting restrictions. This is one of the first things they did when they started making these rules, restricting our ability to have representation within this nation. This is clear. My laptop just blacked out on me. Hold on, let me plug me in real quick just in case my battery is dying. I want y'all to follow me real quick, and I want y'all to do the research so that y'all can know that there are Moors that don't follow this twisted, slave-minded logic. I'll never be one of them. Never. It continues. His first step was to strip the Moriscos of their arms. This is vital. Let's pause there, and I want to fast forward. One of the first acts that was passed in Jamestown, Virginia, 1639, 1640. Now, this is not too long after I spoke about Antonio becoming Anthony Johnson, owning land, his own servants, winning court cases against Europeans in the colonies. This is one of the first acts. This is the Henning edition, Statutes at Large, Volume 1, page 226. And this can be found at www.virtualjamestown.org, laws1.html. This is Act number 10. It reads, this is January 1639, 1640, Act 10. The commentary states, this statute created a legal distinction between white and black men. This is one of the first statutes. It says, all persons except Negroes to be provided with arms and ammunition or be fined at pleasure of the governor and council. Let me read that again, this act. One of the first acts that restricted our people and made a distinction between Moors and Europeans, or white and black people, because during this time, Europeans weren't calling themselves white. They didn't start calling themselves white until 1681. They referred to themselves as either Christian or English. The act reads, all persons except Negroes to be provided with arms and ammunition or be fined at pleasure of the governor and council. Now let's go back to King Philip, right? King Philip reigned between the years of 1554 and 1558. History started repeating itself on this land once Christians started to take control of certain offices. So let me read again. It says, his first step was to strip the Moriscos of their arms. And for this purpose, he sent on different pretenses several regiments of Castilians to quarter among them, by whom a great quantity of arms of all kinds were seized. But as their suspicions were perpetually awake, they had penetrated his design and concealed a considerable quantity. So, this gets into Moors hiding their weapons, etc., due to King Philip. So I'm not going to read all of this. I want to get to the decree, however, of King Philip, a decree that he made, because this is key, because it relates to what I read earlier about Christian white males and a South Carolina act in 1721 that said if you weren't a Christian white male that you couldn't vote. So listen, pay attention, people. It says, and this is King Philip's decree, he says that henceforth the Moriscos, these were Moors, this is the name that these people chose to give Moors who stayed in Europe but not keep, well, they still practice Islam, but they purported to practice Christianity. You know, they still practice Islam. This book right here, The Dogs of God by James Reston Jr., Columbus, the Inquisition, and the Defeat of the Moors, is an excellent resource. Within this book, it's telling you about how these Moors who become Moriscos just to keep their land. Remember, we had been in Europe for so long, 700-800 years before we lost it, that we had land and property that was tied into our family for generations. So they would come into the homes and check to see if you had paintings of European Jesus on your wall. And if you didn't, you were subject to the tortures of the Inquisition, believe it or not. This book, like we get into the scholarship. We don't just willy-nilly make up phrases and think that what Prophet Noble Drew Ali said had to be in conjunction with something that some fool said. No, we don't do that. So King Philip II of Spain puts forth this decree that henceforth the Moriscos shall lay aside their native language, dress, and peculiar customs, and in future adopt those of the inhabitants of Castile, that they shall no longer take Moorish names and surnames. Like, that's just so key with the prophet giving us El, which is the root of the word Allah, making any name that we take a theophoric name, meaning connecting the name of our God to whatever name that we have now. And Bey, which is an Islamic title for governor, and not that crazy stuff that you see with, you got the fez on one side and the Indian headdress on one side, and it says El is the cosmic lawgiver, and Bey is just garbage. And why people look at this movement is crazy. It says that they shall no longer take Moorish names or surnames, but such as are generally used in Spain. So we had to stop using our Moorish Islamic names, something that Anthony Johnson, whom I noted earlier, of the first 21, who was not a slave that came in 1619, but a servant, is smashing out this myth of 400 years, because we got to put that also into the context of what Kanye West is saying. We were not enslaved on this land for 400 years. Like the prophet said, I can't save you. Nobody can save you, but if I can just get you to thinking, you will save yourselves. Think, Moors, think. It continues that they shall bear none of these symbols about them by which the disciples of Muhammad are distinguished. Prophet Noble Drew Ali brings to us what? The crescent moon and the five-pointed star. These symbols that have been with us. Again, check out some of my research. I have a video where I'm shutting down the crazy bogus claims of the Hebrew Israelite group ISUPK. And I'm showing in the archaeological records where the use of the crescent moon and star dates all the way back to at least the 13th century BC. And the archaeologists concluded that this motif of the crescent moon and star could be found on Moabite name seals. Like everything that you hear me speaking of, I have the scholarship to back it up. And what's my opinion? I'll just flat out say it's my opinion. So when I told the Moors on that thread, I'm going to prove you wrong, one of the brothers asked me, is your interpretation basically versus mine? How can you prove it wrong? No, I'm going to deal with the facts. You deal with interpretation, beloved, not me. It says, they shall discontinue the use of their baths, which shall be immediately destroyed. Remember, when the Moors come into Europe, one of the things that they do, thousands, some estimate 10,000, 20,000 bathhouses all over Europe. You can take a bath in the middle of the street. So they took this from us. They started to spread a rumor that washing was sinful, bathing was sinful. So they started smelling. One book that I read years ago, I didn't read the whole thing. I read passages from it. It said that the European woman was so attracted to the Moors because every time that they would engage them in Europe, they would always smell like the perfume of fresh flowers, while their own men smelled musty and funky. There's a history that we haven't even cracked open yet. We got to get into this. Look, I don't brag or boast about anything, but I'm stepping up as a Moorish scholar, point blank, period. And my views sharply disagree with the views of many brothers in the organization that I'm a member of. I'm dealing with the scholarship, not just what I want or think perhaps is truth. Let's go back. It says that their women shall not, as hitherto, meaning what they're used to, appear in veils. Because we know that the veil becomes a part of Islam. Now, this is not an original aspect of Islam. So we could deduce that when they remove the veil, they also remove the head wrap. So Prophet Noble Drew Ali comes back on the scene, brings us our religion, Islam, brings us our dress. Remember, it said, this decree of King Philip says that y'all can't dress like this anymore. And of course, it has a Western flair to it because we live here in the United States of America. He brings us our crescent moon and our star and our standard that he said was 10,000 years old. I can't prove this flag is 10,000 years old. I have it. I believe that he means that this 5-pointed star is a standard of our people. And I showed that in the ISUPK rebuttal video that in a piece of pottery dating back to 527 BC, we see a 5-pointed star just like that with words in between each point that read Jerusalem. And Jerusalem just means city of peace. Okay, so my screen just keeps going blank on my laptop, and I have you all get the point. I don't have to read the rest of that. I think that I've overly made my point that honors brothers that feel that the information in this video is epic, as the brother just said. And for those of you who think that it's wrong, go back, watch it all over again, point out where I'm wrong at. If you come on my video saying I'm wrong without educating me, then you're not living up to the principles of a Muslim communicated to the ignorant. You're just saying I'm wrong because you think that your interpretation is right. If you're right, I will be the first one to come on and say, wow, you are right. Show and prove Kanye West's statement that 400 years of slavery was a choice. Remove the 400 years from it, if you will, and show and prove that slavery was a choice, using Prophet Noble Drew Ali's own words in chapter 47, verses 15 through 17. That is my challenge to all of you who believe this crazy notion, you Moors that agree with Kanye West's ludicrous assertion that historians are coming out in droves debunking. Moors, we gotta wake up. We gotta wake up. You people are giving Prophet Noble Drew Ali a bad rap. I'm looking at the Moors who are clicking like on these comments and co-signing this stuff. And I'm like, thinking about when the prophet said, if I could just get you to thinking, you will save yourself, which peels back another layer of why this movement is so separated and why the schism is and the rift is so deep. There are people that want to hold on to this stuff because they get to cater to the ignorance of a majority of the masses. There are Europeans who are going around reposting Kanye West's statements. Kanye West would tweet out a quote attributed to Harriet Tubman that says, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they only knew that they were slaves. You have historians saying that this is an inaccurate quote that came out in the 1990s that Europeans were using to try to justify our enslavement. This is something that I have to look into myself. But the key that's being missed here is she said, I freed 1,000 slaves. People are focusing on the back and not thinking. Moors, Prophet Noble Drew Ali gave us the tools to cause us to think critically. Before I end this, I want to say this. Before I end this, I want to say this. Prophet Noble Drew Ali is getting a bad rap because of some of y'all Moors, man. Let's just be honest. Some of you Moors are just, y'all won't study anything outside of what you've memorized. I've had Moors tell me, oh, you know, that scholarship stuff, I leave that to y'all. I'm more into the spiritual stuff. What are you talking about? What does that even mean? The lessons teach us that on the plane of soul, that the things, and on the plane of spirit, we can't even see from our standpoint of flesh what the happenings on those planes. What do you mean you're like, I don't get that. It is an excuse that Moors, like many of them, are very self-righteous. They think that they're right no matter what. That they use to say that I don't care what you say. I've studied Noble Drew Ali's teachings and memorized them for the most part. And anything you say to the contrary is against Noble Drew Ali. And this is just an asinine, limiting statement. And it not only stunts your growth, it stunts the growth of the people that you teach, whether it be your spouse or your children or the people within your temples. This is why I'm different. This is why I'm just cut from a different cloth. Prophet Noble Drew Ali allegedly said new Moors would come in one day, eyes wide open, seeing and knowing, and we're here now. And it's time for, we can be leading this thing. We got to bring it together. I'm not going to get into the schism and all of that. I just wanted to make this point. You can't spiritualize your way out of your own misinterpretation. You can't do that. This is what people try to do. It just makes us all look bad, and it makes nobody want to listen to one that may stand alone in the scholarship or in the research. And so with that, I want to say peace. I'm not going to go through the comments. I've been on here longer than I wanted to, but I think this particular topic deserved the time that I was able to allot to it. And in that, I say peace.